We'll cover Maven today. In Maven, what we'll do is first we're gonna download this zip file from Maven's website. Okay, after you download this zip file, you extract it to some folder in your system, and then you add it to your path. So what I've done is I've set this new variable called Maven_home that points to this directory in my file system and added it to path. So after that, I've added it somewhere over here, and after that I go to the command line, and when I do mvn-version in the command line, it will give me the version of Maven. It'll say where my Maven home is. It also gives me some information about Java home and OS home. Now, what is Maven? Okay, so Maven is a project management tool. Okay, it manages projects, build, dependencies, and documentation. What are dependencies? Your project sometimes, like for example, when you run your JUnit test, you have your JUnit jar in your path, build path. So you need that to run your JUnit test, and that's your dependency of your project. And when they write JUnit, for example, when you write your JUnit test, you need the JUnit jar. Same thing with their project. JUnit might need some other projects to run. So that is called a transitive dependency. So a dependency is something that you need, and that dependency might need something else to run as well, right? Because that dependency might be built on some other libraries, and that will be called the transitive dependencies. And with Maven will take care of all of those. So this is a project management and a dependency management tool. It's based on a concept of a project object model called POM. We'll look into this. And there's a concept called repositories in Maven. So your dependent jars, like your JUnit jar, for example, there's a repository online or in your file system where the jar is stored. So a repository is a place where you go to find your jars. Okay, so what Maven does is it goes to a central repository and it finds the JUnit jar, it downloads it for you, and it will store it in your local repository in your file system. So that's how Maven works. Maven will make a local repository in your file system. Where it is it will be inside your C drive, users, and your username, and inside that there is a folder called .m2, and inside .m2 it will have a folder called repositories, and in repositories it will have all those jars, whatever jars you need throughout building your projects. Okay, so it has a lot of plugins that you can use for Java, and it uses convention over configuration. What is convention over configuration? So when we did ant, in ant you defined your targets, right? You said this is a target, this is what I want to do in this target. But with Maven, what happens is Maven has some inbuilt tasks, some inbuilt targets, which will do some things by default. So you don't have to tell Maven to clean your project. Okay, Maven has something like that already in it, so it will clean it for you. You just say Maven clean. You don't define anything in a file like build.xml called pom.xml. There's a file called pom.xml in Maven where you won't be defining your targets like that. It has some things by default, so you'll be using those things. So this will minimize code, right? You don't have to write those targets yourself. And okay, this is a sample build.xml, and this is a simple pom.xml for Maven. So it starts with project, just like ant, right? And in here there are some other tags. This is a model version, group ID. This is something that you want it to be unique for your organization. Okay, this artifact ID is your project name. So artifact, your project is an artifact. Think of your project as an artifact. So that's your project, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't have to be exactly like your project name. Okay, and this is a version. So Maven helps with versioning. So your project, when you start with your project, you might not have all the features in the project. Later on you might add some features and you'll roll out a new version, and that will be a new version of your project. So you do the versioning over here. So Maven helps you with that. And this looks a lot more simpler than Ant, right? So in your Ant build.xml, you had all these targets. Now you don't have to write those. This pom.xml will work, and you can just go ahead and do a Maven clean. It will run a clean phase in Maven. I'll talk about that in a bit. So that's the convention over configuration thing. So we downloaded this. We made here we have this m2_home. We named it maven_home, and there is a settings.xml file which is inside your C drive username, which is your home directory. Inside that there is .m2. Inside that there is a settings.xml, which will be the global settings for Maven. Okay, so that's that. And Maven repository. So there's a local repository in your file system that's inside .m2. There will be a central repository, and sometimes there are some remote repositories that you might have to use. Central repository, Maven has a central repository. Sometimes there will be some of the remote repositories that you might want to use, because some things that are not in central might be available in remote. You know, and not everything is inside Maven's repository. Okay. So local repository, your project's dependent jar, like the JUnit jar, they are downloaded and they are stored in the local repository. And the default location is that. Okay, so you can change the location of local repository in this global configuration file. This is m2_home/conf. So that's in your Maven download. Inside your Maven download, you have a conf directory. Inside that there is a setting.xml where you can update that. Okay, so if you don't want to put it here, you can change it right there. So Maven has a concept of a build life cycle. Okay, so Maven has 3 different life cycles: default, clean, and site. In each life cycle, there are a lot of build phases. Okay, so a phase is a stage in the build process or life cycle. So a life cycle has a bunch of phases. Okay, and they are executed sequentially. So a default life cycle, for example, has these phases. Okay, it has more, but these are just some of the phases in the default life cycle. If you run one of these phases, it will run everything before it. Everything that precedes it will be run before it runs package, for example. Okay, so when you do package, it will start from validate. If this is the first one, there are more actually, so it will do everything that's before package, and it will come to package, and it will finish the task related to package. Okay, so that's the phases in a life cycle. If you want to know more about that, you can go here. We'll talk about that in a bit. And there is also a concept of goals. Okay, so goals are things that are available in a Maven plugin. Okay, so I think we need to go back here to understand that. First, before we do that, let's go over this simple Maven file. Okay, so this is a Maven project, hello world. There is a small m on here that Eclipse has put to signify that this is a Maven project. And this is my pom.xml. This is the same level as my build.xml was in Ant, so that is directly inside the project folder. And all I have here is I have a dependency. Okay, so that's where I specify my dependency. There is a tag called dependencies. Inside that there will be individual dependencies. Okay, so this is one dependency inside this dependencies. So there can be another dependency tag here. I can start a dependency tag right like that. Okay, so you can fill this up here. Okay, so this dependency also has a group ID, artifact ID, and version, like our project does, right? So later on, this project will have this information. This is my project's information, right? So later on, someone else, if they need this dependency, then they'll be specifying these things. Okay, So this group ID for JUnit is JUnit, artifact ID is JUnit, and version is that. So this is the version I'm doing, and scope we'll talk about it in a bit. So this is a simple Maven file, and my dependencies are downloaded to Maven dependencies. So there's my dependency. So this is taken care by Maven. Okay. So if I'll delete this. Okay. So I'll just delete this, and what I'll do is so that's gone, right? See that? The Maven dependencies disappear, right? So if I paste this, okay, and I save it, look at here. There's downloading something right here. So after that, it added that. So it does it for you automatically. Okay, so you don't have to go find the jar, put it inside a lib folder like you did with Ant. Okay, it will do it automatically for you. So it downloads it, puts it in your local repository. Mine is C drive users Ruben, that's home.m2, and repository. Inside that there is JUnit, that. See this is the group ID, artifact ID, and the version. So that's my folder structure as well in the file system. Okay. And about convention over configuration, there's the structure called source main Java, source test Java. So if you do this, then Maven knows where to find your source files. Okay, you have to do source main Java and source test Java. So you put all your test files inside source test Java, put all your source files in source main Java. Okay, so that's something that you have to follow in order for Maven to know what these things are. So I'm here. Let me find this workspace, and in here, this is my hello world. Right? So I'll go to hello world. So this has my pom.xml. So I'll just do Maven clean. Okay. So it scanned for a project, it built that project, okay, it cleaned it, it runs this clean plugin, okay, and then build success. Okay, so let's go to maven-help. So what else are available for me? So these are the options that are available. Okay, so if I do a Maven build, okay, so that didn't work. Okay, I'm sorry, there's no such thing as that. So I'll do a Maven install. Okay, so if I do a Maven install, this is a phase in Maven. When you do a Maven install, it will run every phase before install, and it will do an installation. Installation basically means it will put this thing in your local repository. So now this project is available in your local repo. So if I go to repository, right, and then what was my name? My app name was under my company app, right? So if I go here, I'll find right, and then there is a thing called my company, right, and app and hello world. So this is my hello world jar right here. Okay, so this is my jar. So this is what Maven built and installed in my local repo. So there's the build success. Okay, so now let's go back to some theory. Okay, so this group ID, it's just a naming convention guide in Maven's website that you can look into. Okay, okay, so the build lifecycle. So whenever you do a Maven clean install, for example, so the clean phase is not available in the default lifecycle. You remember we said there were 3 different lifecycles, right? So one was default, one was clean, and one was site, right? The default lifecycle has all these phases, okay? But clean is available in the clean lifecycle. So when we do clean, this clean is a phase in the clean lifecycle, and in the clean lifecycle there are 3 phases, okay? There's a pre-clean, clean, and post-clean. So when you run clean, it will run pre-clean, and it will run clean, because it will run anything before clean, right? So it will run pre-clean and it will run clean. After that, it will go to install. It will see where is installed. So it is in my default lifecycle. So it will go to install, and it will run everything before install. These might not be all of the things that are before install. There might be other phases, and that will all run, and then we'll do an install. Okay, so that's what Maven does when you do Maven clean install. Okay, so this command will traverse into all the sub projects and run clean and then install. So for example, if this thing was inside, you can have another multi-module scenario where a project has more projects inside it. But if you do a Maven clean install in your root project, it will go inside all those projects and it will do a clean and install for all those projects. Okay, so that works as well. So it's recursive like that. Okay, and the phase is tied to a goal, right? So think of a plugin as an AND target. Okay, a Maven plugin is an AND target, and a plugin has a bunch of goals, and each goal is a task. Okay, so let me look at this one plugin that I just found. So this is a dependency plugin. Okay, in this plugin there is this goal called copy dependencies that we are currently in. If you go back here, this is the dependency plugin. Okay, and this dependency plugin has all these goals: analyze depth, management. All these plugins are related to this dependency goal. Sorry, all these goals are related to this dependency plugin. So when you do something like this, Maven clean dependency, copy dependencies, and package. Okay, so this will run pre-clean and clean in your clean lifecycle, and it will go and run this goal, copy dependencies from the dependency plugin, and it will run package and everything before package in the default lifecycle. Okay, so because package is in the default lifecycle, right? But sometimes what happens is a plugin may be bound to 0 or more build phases. Okay, so a goal like copy dependencies might be bound to 0 or more build phases. Sometimes it is bound to a build phase, okay, and it might be bound to more build phases. So what happens at that time? Okay, so if I go here and click on copy dependencies, it says binds by default to the lifecycle phase process sources. Okay, so where is process sources? This is my default lifecycle, right? In here, process sources is somewhere here, right? So this is where it's bound. Okay, so when it runs this goal, since it's bound to this phase, it will have to run all these phases, okay, before it runs this. That goal is bound to this phase, right? So it will have to run all these phases and then run this phase where that goal executes, okay, since that goal is bound to this phase. And after that it goes to package and it runs everything before package, and then each of those things might have some goals which it has to run to. Okay, so if a goal is bound to one or more build phases, that goal will be called in all those phases. So my copy dependency goal might be bound to other build phases before package or package itself, right? If it's bound there, then it doesn't matter if I executed this here, it will run that again. Okay, so since it is bound to more things, it will be running it in all those phases. Okay, but now I know that this is only bound to one phase, that is the copy sources, right? So let's look at this, for example. So this is a Maven plugin, right? So this is how you define a plugin. In your file pom.xml, you'll have a plugins element in which you'll have all your plugins. Okay, so here you have a plugin, and you say where this plugin's goal is. So the goal is Java, right? So this Java goal might be bound to some build phase. So wherever that build phase is, it will run it at that build phase. And you can also specify the phase over here. So if you want your phase to be something else, you can specify it here, and then it will run it for that phase. Okay, so this, when you specify a goal in this plugin, so this is that's what it does. Okay. Let's come back to this and see what the differences are between Maven and Ant. Okay, so Ant doesn't have any formal conventions like a common project directory structure like source main Java or source test Java. It doesn't have that. Okay, Ant is procedural, so you have to tell Ant what to do, because you have to mention this target depends on this, and that's how Ant knows, okay, I have to run this before I run this target. Okay, so Ant doesn't also have a life cycle, so you have to define your goals and goal dependencies, your targets. Okay, and Maven has conventions, so you have your source main Java, source test Java. That's a convention, and it is also declarative. So you tell it where you put your. It will tell you where you put your source directory, and it also has a life cycle. Okay, so Maven has intelligence about common project tasks. For example, if you do a Maven test, it will run your test files. Okay, and that's a short introduction to Maven.